especially about one subject that for me is so important, is compassion, that goes together with love. Okay? But I feel like doing something today in the beginning that normally I don't do so much, which is just to share a little bit about myself. Somehow I feel like I was born in 81, and I come from a family from the side of my father is a traditional Jewish family, and from the side of my mother a Christian family, Protestant Presbyterian. And since when I was small, I would go to church with my grandmother. I never met my grandfather from the side of my mother, so I would go to church with my grandmother. And on the other side of my father, I would go sometimes to the synagogue with my grandfather and my grandmother. This is like how I grew up from this religious point of view a little bit. Until a certain age, because when I was very young actually, when I was around 5 years old, Lama Michel Rinpoche, that is my teacher, Tibetan Buddhist master, he came to Brazil for the first time. I was living in São Paulo. And at that time, my mother was the one that helped to organize his teachings and his program there, just in order to make a favor to a friend, actually. And 1 year later, ended up that she was opening one of the first Buddhist centers in Brazil. So my parents started to follow Buddhism, and slowly, I also got near to it. It was natural. So from the first moment actually I met Lama Ganchen, it was like falling in love at the first sight. I was very small, but I saw him the first time and I didn't want to get away from him. And I wanted to sleep in the house where he was staying. And I didn't know anyone really there, but it was some sort of a very strong connection for me. And what happened later is that as the years passed by, I never had any sort of strong imposition from the religious point of view of what I should do or what I shouldn't do. And also Buddhism doesn't have this type of idea of conversion and things like that. But what happened is that all of us, which means my father, my mother, me, and some many other friends, we started slowly to get more and more near to Buddhism. So when I was like 8, we went to India together with Lama Ganchen for a whole pilgrimage to all the Buddhist sites. And then when I was 10, we went to Tibet together. And all the different experiences, traveling around together and meeting different people, start opening my mind, and I start making some questions. So when I was between 11 and 12, I started making many questions. And the main question I was making all the time, I never talked at that time with anyone. I've always been quite a quiet person with myself. Like I let everything move inside. When I am decided, then I may speak about it. Before that, I may not talk so much about it. So what happens is that my question was, what am I doing here? Studying mathematics, geography, Portuguese, English, all the other subjects we study in school. And my question was, why? I come from a wealthy family. Nothing never lacked for me. So I was looking around, and the only answer that I found at that time, now today I would give a different answer, okay? But at that time when I was 11, the only answer I found was, I study all of this in order to finish school, go to university, and if everything goes really well, I will be able to have a job that I like and I am well paid. So this looked like why I was studying. That was the answer I found at the time. So then I started to look around my mostly family, and I saw many uncles and people in the family that were quite wealthy. Nothing lacked for them. They had the best education. They had very good jobs. And very often, whenever I would listen to them talking, like for example, whenever we have Christmas in my mom's family, Christmas is quite a big gathering, like Normally when we have Christmas dinners and Christmas lunches, it's like minimum of 50 to 80 people. So it's a big family, and I would always, when I was small, always like to sit together with the adults and listen to the conversations. And very often, what were the conversations about? Complaining about life. Something was wrong here and there. And then I was looking at these people around me, and I was saying, is that what I want to be? Is this the objective? They have money, they have good jobs, they had the best education, but they don't look really happy. And whenever I looked at Lama Ganchen, my teacher, he always looked so happy and so joyful and so stable and satisfied and so peaceful. So I said, I want to be like him. This was basically what moved me when I was small. And then when I was 12, I made a strong decision. I want to follow his footsteps. So I said, what did he do? He went to the monastery, so I'm going to do the same. So making a long story short, when I was 12, I decided to go to the monastery. And I entered the monastery in the south of India. Big monastery, were like around more than 4,000 monks. And it's actually a monastic university, one of the biggest that exists. And I stayed living there and studying there for about 12 years. So my main teacher, my spiritual guide, Lama Michel Rinpoche, he lives in Italy. He's Tibetan, but he lives in Italy since the beginning of the 80s. So after I finished one important part of my studies, I wanted to be near to him, so I came to Italy. And since then, at that time, I started mostly teaching and sharing my small knowledge and experience, and basically helping with the different centers for meditation and so on. And I finished the other part of the studies going to Tibet for the past 10 years. So basically, this is more or less how come I am here. Okay. But one time I was in a family dinner in New York with the Jewish part of the family. And it was a marriage. And then one moment, like many family members that I really have not had much acquaintance with. And at one point we were talking and one lady asked me, but why you didn't become a rabbi? Because it was much more near to your original culture. And what I think is that I just said, look, the reason is because the person I met that was an example of life for me was a Tibetan Buddhist Lama. If the person that I would have met would have been a rabbi, maybe I would have followed that path. But the main reason was a human example of love, of compassion, of wisdom, of peace, of joy. That's basically what I followed, a human example. No? Very luckily for me, later when I went to study more deeply the Buddhist philosophy, I loved it very much, and I still love it very much. Because otherwise it would have been a problem. If I go to the monastery after a long time, then I don't like Buddhism itself, then it will be quite complicated. But I believe it very much. For me, it's really amazing, the teachings and so on. So, this is more or less how the whole path that brought me here today. Okay? My wish today is simply to share with you a little bit of my experience, maybe some little bit of knowledge. It's not to teach anyone. Okay? I'm not here to teach, I'm just here to share a little bit with you. And we'll just keep track of time, which I think is also important. Okay. And so basically, to talk about compassion. Compassion in Buddhism, it is one of the fundamental parts of the spiritual path. And actually one of the fundamental qualities that we as human beings can and should develop. Okay. But before entering more into details about compassion itself, I think there are some small points I'd like to share before that. And I've been traveling to many different places. I have met people from different cultures, different religions, different social status. And there is something that is extremely strong in my experience. Is that it doesn't matter what the culture we come from, what's the level of education, what the type of education we have, the social level we live in, we are all very much the same. We are very different in many aspects. There are not two human beings that are exactly the same. But there are many aspects in which we are very similar, and there are a few aspects in which we are extremely similar, for not to say exactly the same. And what I found that we are the same, that wherever I went, whoever I met, we all want to be happy. Nobody wants to suffer. It doesn't matter who. It doesn't matter the social level, the culture, the religion, nobody wants to suffer. And everybody does whatever they do, thinking is the best for their own happiness. Often guided by their own ignorance. It's quite amazing actually when we look and we observe that everything that is done in this world, the most amazing things and the most terrible things, if we look back, most of the times, why people do what they do? Because they think it is the best for their own happiness. Guided by their own ignorance. And sometimes by some wisdom. But mostly, we just think it's the best. How many times in our life we do things thinking it's the best and afterwards we see it was not really the best? Okay. So, looking to that, I made a question that slowly came to my mind, which was, okay, if we all want the same, what are we doing wrong? Because if we want to be happy, are we doing the right thing? Are we not doing the right thing? I asked first for myself. I looked at myself and I said, okay, what I want is to be happy independently of the religion that I will follow, independently of this lifestyle that I will have. What I want is basically I want to be happy and I want to help others to be happy. So here come a few questions. What is happiness? Where do I project my own happiness? What do I do to be happy? And am I doing the right thing or not? So, observing a little bit, I saw that, first of all, for me, happiness is an inner state. Normally, very often when we see people describing happiness, we have the tendency to describe happiness describing a sort of a perfect world. Happiness is being at my house with my family and friends, and where everything is fine, no one is fighting, and everything is perfect and in harmony. That is happiness. That's the condition through which I may experience happiness. But I believe that happiness, first of all, is an inner state. Happiness is that moment in which everything is fine and we do not wish for anything to be different than what it is. It's that moment. One time I was trying to describe happiness for a group of children in Brazil. So I was thinking, how do I describe it? And I was just thinking, happiness is that moment. It came quite clear to me. Happiness is that moment, which normally doesn't last that long. But that's that instant in which we are not protecting ourselves for anything. We are not wishing anything to be different from what it is. Everything is just fine. We are just happy. So, happiness is a sensation. It's an inner experience. It's an experience that whenever we have it, we want it to continue. We don't want it to end. And whenever it ends, we want it to come back as soon as possible. Okay? So we remain with that longing for that inner experience. So we try constantly to create conditions in order to generate it again. Okay? So, where do I normally project my own happiness? If we look around, most of the times we project our happiness into, let's say, 3 or we can call 4 things, mostly. We project the happiness into material things. No? To see where we project our happiness is just to see where we put our energy. But Okay, so if we gain material things, do they make us happy or not? There was one study by United Nations in which they asked, does money bring happiness? The conclusion was yes, up to a certain point. If I cannot eat, if I have no safe place to live, if I cannot protect myself from the cold or from the heat, if I cannot take care of my health, if I cannot give education to my children, then I will suffer more. If I don't have the basic needs as a human being, I will suffer more. Otherwise, whenever we get above our basic needs, it doesn't matter how much more we accumulate, it will not bring the level of satisfaction and happiness or peace higher. Okay? So, this is one point. But normally, do we project our happiness in material things or not? Mostly yes. Okay. There is even one story of one Tibetan Buddhist meditator, very famous. His name was Milarepa, and he had almost nothing. But then he was thinking, oh, you know, if anyone coming to steal things from me, a robber may come, I have no problem. I have nothing to steal. But then what happened is that a robber came, and he stole his only cooking pot. And he would only cook one type of soup made out of, I don't know in English, we call chiga in Portuguese. Nettles. It's this type of green vegetable that if you touch with the hand, it burns. Brown. So, anyhow, so he had only that to eat, but he would cook it. And suddenly someone came and stole his cooking pot. And then he was saying afterwards, I thought I had nothing, but actually I had something and I was attached to it, you know. And now what I do without my cooking pot. The point is that, yes, we need some material things. The basic, it is important. There's nothing wrong on having material things. But the material things that we possess, they are a mean, a tool, not a final goal. Because they cannot sustain our happiness. It's not the more money I have, the more happy I am. The more houses I have, the more happy I am. The bigger place in which I live, the more happy I am. It's not like that. Let me know that. Second point in which we project our happiness. Pleasures of the body. Pleasures of the five senses. Is it nice when we have a pleasure of our senses? That's why it's called pleasure, otherwise it would not even be called pleasure, right? But, is there any pleasure that can sustain happiness? Is there any pleasure that in the moment that I have the pleasure, the more pleasure I continue to have, it is able to keep and maintain the same level of satisfaction and happiness? I don't know, for instance, I'm very thirsty and I drink water. Is it nice? It's so nice. It gives really a sensation of pleasure, a sensation of satisfaction. But what happens if I continue to drink water? And I go on, 1 glass, 2 glasses, 3 glasses, 1 liter, 2 liters, 3 liters. Does the same water keep the same sensation of satisfaction? Or after some time it changes? Changes into suffering. The same act of drinking water from the same water source that before in the first moment gave me great joy and pleasure, if I continue to keep it, it will become suffering. And like this we can go on with all pleasures. Now, if someone that we really love comes to us and makes us a nice caress to us, in a nice way, we like it. Then what happens? If the person continues and go on and go on and go on and go on after 1 hour or 2 hours, at one moment you say, excuse me, sorry, I have something else to do. Okay. The point very basically is that there is nothing wrong in the pleasures of the senses, but the pleasures of the body cannot sustain a state of satisfaction and happiness. Okay? The third thing in which we project our happiness, our image, what others think of us. When we receive a compliment, do we like it? You know, there is one classical thing that it's actually even funny. Like when someone come and tell anyone of us, oh, do you know that that person that I really take into consideration said these nice things about you? And what we answer sometimes, what we listen people say, sorry, I couldn't listen well, could you repeat it again? Sure, we listened perfectly, but it's a sort of massage to our ego, no? It's like, oh, how nice. If someone talks badly about us, does it harm us? We feel sad, we feel suffering. Okay? It touches us. Actually, it's our image. How many things we do in our life, not because we truly think that's the best way of doing things, but because by doing that, other people may think this or may think that. This is happening also. So, basically, our image, in the same way, it doesn't matter how many compliments I receive, after some time it does not maintain the same level of satisfaction and joy. So once again, I project my happiness in something that cannot sustain it. Okay. So, what are the things that I can project my happiness, I can invest my energy, and finally will truly sustain? The more I have, the better I am. Is there anything that works in that way? Because material things, it's not like that. I know many people that have enough money for this and for the next 10 lives if they could take for the next life. In Buddhism, we believe in reincarnation. You know, even one time, one friend is one of the most rich men in Brazil. And then he came to me and said, look, now, in Buddhism you have the system of reincarnation, right? I said, yes. And there is also a system to recognize reincarnation. I say, yeah, not all the time, but sometimes it's possible. What about if I make a trust? I put a big amount of money aside. I give to someone who is able an amount of money, a percentage, whatever. And then you recognize my next life and you give the money to my next life. I was saying, I'm sorry, even though it may look like a good business to do. But I really would not trust anyone on that. Okay, even because I have no idea what will happen after I die. So it is not like that. So the point is that even when we have, I know people that have a lot of money, but this doesn't mean it makes them more happy. And truly speaking, in the part of the world and in the conditions that we live, we don't have any true real material difficulty. And so we know by our own experience that material gain is not bringing more happiness. So it's not something that the more I have, the more happy I am. Pleasures, what do we see nowadays? That there is no limit. So people always try to get more and more and more and more. And what happens? In order to try to maintain the same level of satisfaction, people always go to more and more extreme things. And what's the final result? More insatisfaction. In the image, it's the same. You know? I have friends that work with very famous people from the show business and so on. Many people that are very famous, they suffer so much when someone don't recognize them. Because there is an attachment to one's image, so strong. So it's not like the more famous I become, the more happy I am. Okay? So what are the things that the more I have, the better I am? And not only that, that I can truly trust. Because I really hope everybody to have a very long life and healthy life. Let's say I will live a very long life, okay? So one day I am there in my 90s, like my grandfather nowadays is still very healthy, 92. Let's say I follow his footsteps. Can anyone ensure me that I will have a material stable situation? No, no one. Independent of our situation at the present, we are not really sure what will happen later. Can anyone ensure me that I will be healthy? Independently of the age I will be. Can anyone ensure me that I will have good friends and nice people around me, taking care of me and looking for me and nice people to talk and exchange? So it doesn't matter how much I invest my energy into material stability, into my health, into friendship, which everything is fine and good. I cannot truly trust any one of these things. So, what can I truly trust? And what is that the more I have, the better I am? Let's say I am very old. I am able to have a long life. It doesn't matter if I will be, independently of any age in my life, it doesn't matter at any moment in my life if I will be rich or poor, if I will be in health or sick, if I will be alone or in company. Patience will help me. Inner stability will help me. Love will help me. Compassion will help me. Inner peace will help me. And these are the things, the more I have, the better I am. The more love I feel, the better I am. The more inner stability I have, the better I am. The more compassion I feel, the better I am. The more wisdom I have, the better I am. The more generosity, effort, concentration, and many qualities that we can develop. Satisfaction. All our inner qualities. The more I develop my qualities, the better I become. The more happy I become. When I was around 17, 18, a little bit before actually, I think it's around 16, I came one time traveling to Italy, and one day I understood something, which for me was so clear. There are some moments in life in which we're able to understand something, like we know intellectually already before, but there is a moment, I don't know exactly why, at that moment it's like, oh, I got it. And what became very clear for me was that problems exist and will always exist. And I was so relaxed, so relieved after that. Because normally what happens? Whenever we have a problem and we are able to solve that problem, when that problem finishes, what happens after that? A new one comes. If we are lucky, we have one. Sometimes more than one. Okay? But that's a very basic rule. It doesn't matter where we go, with whom we talk. Okay? I've never seen anyone that says, no, when a problem ends, everything is just fine and we have no more problems. I've never seen anybody telling me that. Okay? So what happened is that, in the moment that I understood clearly, problems exist and will always exist. What does that mean? I cannot live my life expecting problems to end. Problems are part of life. And I need to deal with them. They need to be solved because they are problems, otherwise they are not problems. What don't have solution is not a problem. But I should not, my own happiness, my own inner state of peace, of joy, cannot depend on the existence or the non-existence of problems. Because if my own inner state of joy, of happiness, of peace, should depend on the existence or not of some problems, then I have no solution. Because there is always something coming. In the moment that we need to interact all together, in the moment that we have this body and everything else, there will always be something in a way, something in another way, and that's fine. So from that moment I put one personal objective, which is I want to be in harmony, independently of where I go, with whom I am, in what situation I find myself. I want to be in harmony with myself and others. This is my personal objective. And in order to do that, I have seen that one of the most important things is to invest my energy and project my own happiness into cultivating my own inner qualities. Which for me is what we may call our own spiritual path. Of developing ourselves. And by that, it's part of our own development, helping others, opening ourselves for others. This is one of the most essential things, actually. When we start our own path, most of us, we start from a state of selfishness. Like, selfishness in Buddhism is described as the obsession with self-gratification, where I want everything, I do everything from the point of view of the I and the mine. Some people may say to me, I am not selfish. My children are more important than myself. Sure, your children. Remember that mine is an extension of I. Okay? So it's very common that for us to be selfish. In a way. Do we care about our happiness or not? Sincerely. Yes. Do we want to avoid suffering? Yes. So it's very normal in the beginning of our own spiritual path that we start actually with a sort of a selfish intention. I want to be happy. But as we move along the path, and I believe this is the same independently of the religion, because for me there is something that is very clear, and I wanted to say this before, but anyhow, is the difference that exists between spirituality, the spiritual path, religion, and religious institution. There are three things, all of them are important. Each one of them have their own functions, each their own importance, but they are three connected but different things. The spiritual path is something that is inside each one of us. Is our own, my own way of saying, is my own inner path of developing love, compassion, wisdom, of becoming a better person. The religion is the method I use in order to develop my own spiritual path. Whenever I met someone from a different religion that I saw as a true practitioner within his own religion, a person of faith, whenever we talked, there was much more agreement than anything else, because finally when we are talking about the spiritual path, it's the same. With different words, different terms, maybe the method is not exactly the same, but actually we are talking about the same. And the third part, so the religion is the method that we may use, and the institution is there in order to sustain the method, which is also important. But it's important for me, is like I cannot judge the religion by judging the institution. And I should not judge the spiritual path of someone by judging their religion also in the same way. And one exists in order to serve the next. But the most important thing is our own spiritual path. And in this path, one of the important things I believe is to truly develop of our own love, of our compassion. And what happened, as I was saying before, when we start the path, we start in a more sort of selfish way. I want to be happy, I have my own problems. I look, for example, in Buddhist centers, many people come in the beginning or because they are sick, or because they have a problem in the family, or because they are upset with something in life. Some people very often come in a moment of more difficulty. So what's the main reason? I'm looking for help. I want to be better. I don't want to suffer. That's where we start from, and that's wonderful. That we look for a solution inside ourselves, not necessarily outside ourselves, when we are not happy. But then as we move along the path, there is a moment in which we can experience something that has a much better taste than just gaining what we want for ourselves. It's like making a metaphor. Let's say we are used to eat strawberries, okay? And we like strawberries. But we buy the strawberries that nowadays we find sometimes in supermarkets, which is these big strawberries with the taste of water. Okay? And we are used of eating that strawberry. We have never seen other strawberries, and that's what we ate all the time, and we are happy with it. Whenever we get a nice strawberry with the taste of water, we are happy. Then one day someone comes and somehow we are able to experience one nice wild strawberry. Small, little, ugly, maybe, not so perfectly shaped, but with such a good taste. when we experience the true, natural, true strawberry. What happens when I go back to the other one? Okay, maybe if I have no choice, but it's not even possible to compare with the true strawberry. Okay? Similar to that, the pleasure, the joy, the level of satisfaction that we gain by getting our own objects of desire, by doing things for ourselves is nice, but it's like the strawberry made with the taste of water. When we are able to experience the deep state of satisfaction, of fulfillment, by loving others, by truly opening our heart to others, there's no coming back. It is an experience that it's so much better. And I am sure that if we ask anyone that have truly opened their heart towards others and have dedicated their life in that direction, who is the one that received more benefit? Yourself or the ones that you have helped? Everyone will answer myself. One person that comes to mind in this moment, that for me is one of the inspirations that I have that I met, was Mother Teresa from Calcutta. I met her in '95 in Calcutta, together with Lama Ganchen. They both received a prize for peace. And then we went together with my master to see her in her house. We had some time together. And it was a person of such a great joy. And it was so clear for me that her joy was coming out of her faith and out of her love. So beautiful, so inspiring. But if we look to our own experience, actually, love is one of the greatest qualities we may have, and it gives a lot of joy. That's why very often we see people that everybody wants to be loved. No? There's actually so much conflict sometimes that arises because I want to be loved and I'm not well loved enough, I'm not loved in the right way, and you are not loving me in the way you should love. You are my father, you are my mother, you are my brother, you are my sister, you are my husband, my wife, whatever. So you're supposed to love me and you are not loving, I'm not receiving the love I am supposed to receive. There's a lot of conflicts coming out of that, right? Okay? Why? Because love is good. But we need to understand one thing. It's nice to be loved, but it's much more nice to love. When we truly open our heart to others, oh, this is something that it just makes our life meaningful. It's beyond words. It's not something that truly you can put into words. Trying to explain the joy of opening the heart is trying to explain what is chocolate ice cream to someone that have never ate chocolate or ice cream. How can you say to someone that never ate chocolate ice cream, what is a chocolate ice cream? You can try to explain the best way as possible. Can the other person truly understand? No. But I believe that every one of us have experienced at some point of our life the joy of feeling love, of opening our heart. One time, I went on the internet and I went inside Wikipedia and I looked at the definition of love 2 years ago. And there were 67 different definitions of love. So I said, okay, and the Buddhist one was quite correct. So I will talk about love from the Buddhist perspective, okay? According to Buddhism, love means to wish for happiness. I love you, I wish you to be happy, independently of how, with whom. I simply wish you to be happy. I love you. There is a little problem in this. What is happiness? Because if I wish you to be happy, but I have a total different idea of what is happiness than the idea that you have, and I may try to impose, because I love you, I want to impose my idea of happiness into you. This we see often happening between people that love each other. Family, parents towards their children. I have a case of two family friends actually, that was terrible because so much suffering and conflict between the father and the son. Simply because both of them loved each other, truly, but they had a complete different idea of what happiness meant. It may look quite superficial in a way, but it was quite strong in their life. The father was a man that started up his life from zero, materially speaking, and was able to become a very powerful man in the worlds of politics and business and made a lot of money. And his idea of happiness was not money, but was to be self-sufficient. His idea of happiness was success in his actions. So he wanted to transmit to his son his ways of being happy. So you need to work hard, you need to be able to make your own accomplishments, and so on. The son, his idea of happiness was to enjoy life with the money of his father. Okay? And he liked going to the places in nature, and he liked surfing, and he liked doing other things, nice things also, but why should I work, was his question. He could not find a motivation for that. So the point was that the father had a feeling that the son could not recognize his love, because the son was never satisfied. The son was always feeling the father did not love him, because was not giving him what the father could give. But the father didn't want to give, because the father wanted to show him something else. And there was a big conflict. Ended up in one of them trying suicide at a certain point. It was really strong. Then after, there was people we helped and talking and so on. My mom is a psychologist, so as a friend and family also helping and talking. Finally they understood each other. And at the moment that they looked to each other and said, actually we love each other, we just have a different idea of what love is, then things got pacified. Because one started to respect the view of the other. Okay. So one very important thing in love is, what do I see as happiness? Because I can only love others in a way how I love myself. What do I see as happiness for myself? That's what I will project when I love you. So the more clear is happiness for us, the more clear it can become when we wish it for someone else. If for me happiness is to become very rich and I love you, what do I want for you? For you to be rich. If for me happiness is to have inner stability and joy independently of external conditions, and I love you, what do I want for you? The same. But the more deep is our concept of happiness, the more deep becomes our love also. And in that, when we start simply opening our heart, actually without needing to have too many conceptual ideas of what happiness is or not, we simply look to others and we say, I wish you to be happy. I love you. It makes a big difference. So, there is one aspect in Buddhism which is very important, which is the ability of the mind to be shaped. The more I think in one direction, the more easy it becomes to think in that direction. It's like learning how to play an instrument. When we start playing the instrument, it's difficult. The more I play, the more I play, the more I play, the easier it becomes. So for example, one time I was in Tibet studying, and then when I finished this 3 months of study, I don't remember precisely, it was a period in which I didn't have much contact with other people. I had only my teachers, some other monks in the monastery, and that's all. So when I came out, coming back to Italy, there was a very special experience, which was everyone I was seeing around, in the airport, started in the airport, and everyone in the city. I was in Beijing, coming back, and everybody I was seeing, everybody looked so beautiful. And I simply loved people and I wanted to hug everyone. And I said, I just said, I love you. And so it was such a nice experience. I said, I don't want to lose that. So I said, okay, I need to cultivate it. So I started applying it, making a very simple exercise, which I think everyone can do. Which is every day, choose one person, if possible, more than one, but at least one person. Normally, if we don't know that person, is even better. that we go to this person in the restaurant, in the supermarket, in the road, it doesn't matter where we are, we meet the person and we say, I love you, non-verbally. But if we start saying verbally, I love you, we may create some little conflicts. So, it's not that I go, like today, taking the plane and I do the check-in, and then there's the lady making the check-in, and I look at her and I say, good morning, I love you. Maybe the reaction is not the one we expect. So what happens is that we don't need to say it. We just need to look in the eyes of the other person, open our heart and feel it, and think it. May you be happy. Your happiness is important for me. I wish you to be happy. It's easy, no? How much does it take for us to do that? And when we really do it, it fills up our own heart and mind with joy. One time, after I started doing this, I was in Brazil, actually it was even my birthday. I was at a friend's house. And then I came out of his house, I was waiting for the car. And on the side there was a building in which there was one builder. In Brazil we have actually quite a lot of social difference. So it was from socially a very simple man. And he was there working in the construction, he had his yellow cap of construction. And then he started looking at me. He was staring at me, which is normal, look how I am dressed. And wherever I go, I'm always dressed like this. So he was looking at me. And what happened, I started looking back at him. But normally when someone is looking at you and you look back, what the person does, takes away the sight. Instead not, he stayed looking, he continued to look at me. I said, okay. So I continued to look at him. So he was looking at me, I was looking at him. And then I start to think, I love you, I wish you to be happy. And slowly, naturally, I start to smile, and he started to smile back. And we stayed there, maybe, I don't know, for me it looked like a very long time. Maybe it was 1 minute, maximum 2 minutes. Until my friend looked at me and said, oh, hello, come on, let's go. And it was like infinite, that moment. And it filled my heart with joy. When we are able to look to one person and simply love that person without any condition. I don't know your name, I don't know where you come from, I simply wish you to be happy. It gives us a lot of joy. It fills our own life with great joy. Okay? So based on this, love is one of the greatest qualities that we should develop if we want truly to be happy. Together with love comes compassion. Love, according to Buddhism, is the wish for others to be happy, while compassion is the wish for others to be free from suffering. One comes together with the other. If I love you and I see you suffer, I wish you to be free from suffering. If I wish you to be free from suffering, I also wish you to be happy forever. It's like two sides of the same coin. Okay? So basically, there is one rule that for me is fundamental. Do whatever you want to do in your life. Independently of your religion, independently of your culture, do whatever you want to do, as long as it works. What does it mean for it to work? It means that truly make you happy. Without harming others. Actually, anything that you do that harm others will not truly make you happy. So, it doesn't work. So, the question is, where am I investing my energy? Is it truly making me happy? If yes, wonderful, let's continue. If not, let's change something. Little bit, one step at a time. And from what I have seen, from what I have learned, the only things that we can truly put our energy, that we can really trust, is the development of our true inner qualities and creating good relations with other people. Is developing love and compassion wisdom and satisfaction. Okay? So, we will take now a short break. And after the break, I'd like to explain a little bit more specifically about compassion. The wish for others to be free from suffering. Then there are 4 types of suffering that I like to talk about. And then, very briefly also, share some methods how we can develop more in our own love and compassion. There is one saying from one master which says in Tibetan, Jana mo mai. Whatever is similar, by definition, is different. Whatever is similar, by definition, is different. So when I say all these 2 things are similar, yes, this means they are different. So love and compassion are very similar, but this makes them different also. When we feel love, we open our heart to others, and we focus on something positive. We focus on the wish for the other to be happy. When we feel compassion, we open our heart, but we focus ourselves on suffering that we want to eliminate. We want the other to be free from that suffering. Okay. And then when we talk about suffering, there are different levels of suffering and different forms of suffering. And one of the explanations in Buddhism is there are 4 main causes of suffering that somehow we can call the 4 types of suffering also. Okay. One is the suffering caused by material things, which is the suffering caused by poverty. Okay. But sometimes we also see this suffering somehow connected to the fact of not having what actually we want to have. And when we talk about the suffering by material things, it's one of the important things for us is to understand the difference between what I need and what I want. Okay? If we can make very clear the difference of want and need, already a great part of the material suffering is gone. Especially because most of us, I believe all of us here, we do not live in poverty. Where I lived for many years in India, I have seen a lot of poverty. In Brazil, we do have a lot of poverty that we see. It's not what we see around here. And so, a lot of the suffering that we may have connected to material things are mostly because we make our wants to become needs. And then when we are not able to have them, we suffer. So it's very important to make this distinction. And this brings me to one point which I believe is very important, which is one of the keys for our own happiness is to be satisfied. And there is one of my teachers, his name was NgalSo, he already passed away. He was like a father for me in the monastery. He was the one taking care of me, with whom I lived in the same house. And he taught me many things by example, not by like technical teachings and explanations. And about satisfaction, he taught me many things. But there is one small story which I just wanted to share. Because it was a moment that for me really taught me something. I came for holiday in the West. I came to Italy and Brazil, more or less for a month. When I went back to the monastery, I wanted to bring him a present. What do you give as a present for an old monk? It's quite difficult. So what I bought 2 pairs of socks. Because in India it was difficult to find nice cotton socks, only very synthetic socks. I got the right color, nice red, like dark red, like the normal monk, nice color, beautiful cotton socks. And where we were living in India was very hot, and he used to work a lot also in the monastery, so he was always wearing his shoes. So I thought, okay, that would be very useful for him. So I brought the 2 pairs of socks. I arrived at the monastery, hello, Gela. Gela is a nice way of saying teacher. So So I used to call him Gela. I said, oh Gela, here I have a present for you. He said, oh thank you. Then I gave him the 2 pairs of socks. He looked to it and he said, what do I do with it? I said, look, he also liked making jokes. So I looked at him and said, Gela, look, 3 things. Socks, foot, and shoes. Can you see a relation between the 3? No? And he looked to me and he said, sure, but I already have 2 pairs of socks. One, and then he showed to me, he pointed and he said, you see, 1 pair is with the shoes that I'm using today, and another pair is clean one, which normally I use one and I wash the other. And he raised, Tibetans have the habit to put on the bed 1 carpet. The bed sheets and blanket and so on, they just put on the night. During the day they sit on the table on a carpet. So he raised the carpet and below the carpet there was a clean socks there. So he said, you see, this one are the clean ones, that one are the one I'm using today. When that one is dirty, I will change and I will wash it. So why do I need more socks? And I tried to say to him, look, Ella, first of all, this socks that I brought to you, they are made of natural cotton. The one you have are not. Second, the socks that you were using are old. He needed to put a paper elastic to keep the socks off. He used to put the sock, then he put an elastic and then fold the socks back. And by the end of the day, he had a mark on his leg. And then I said, look for this. Then he looked at me and he said, okay, thank you for your present. It took not more than 2 days that I saw other monks wearing the socks that I gave him. He had a very basic philosophy, in which was, once something is working, don't change it. If I am happy with 2 pairs of socks, why do I need more? And a very basic thing, the more I have, the more I want. The more I want, the less I have. Also in human relations, he taught me this also, because we were living in the same house. And I was cooking every day, breakfast, lunch and dinner, during a period, maybe more like 2 years. He was cooking every day also. We were in the same house, eating at the same time, more or less the same type of food. So I said to him, Gela, maybe why don't we cook together? He said no. He was a man of few words, he would not talk much. I said, okay, I wait a few weeks, 1 week, maybe a few days. And next week I said, Gela, what if I cook and you eat together? I cook every day, no problem. He said, no. Okay. Wait a little bit. I asked again, I said, Gela, what if you cook? I wash the dishes. I go to the shopping and you cook? He said, no. You cook 1 day, I cook 1 day? No. You like my food? He said, yes. I like your food also? He said, no. We don't cook together. Okay. Then passed some days and I said, Gela, but in the Tibetan culture, you don't ask so much things. But I was Western, so I have this excuse of being Western. So I asked him, but tell me why at least. Okay? I understand that no, I accept it perfectly. I will happily continue to cook my food and you cook your food. It's fine. But at least tell me why. Then one day he said, okay, that's very simple. Are we good friends? I said, yes. He said, I also think we are good friends. Do we get well along together, living together? I said, yeah. He said, me too. Do we trust each other and then we are happy together? I said, yes. He said, I also think so. That's why we are not cooking together. Because he said, everything is fine. We are happy together. If we get too near, sooner or later there will be conflict. Yeah. So if things are fine and it is bringing happiness for me and for you, why not to keep things as they are? What we do very often, when we have something good, we want even more. And when we are intimate with someone at a certain level, we want more and more and more and more, up to a moment where it does not sustain the same happiness as before, or conflicts arise. And we lived in the same house for 12 years. We never fought even one day. Never was any conflict, because we knew how to respect the space and the limits of each one and so on. But this is just to say, it's important for us that satisfaction is an inner state. It's not the result of having many things. And it's something that we can cultivate. It's a habit that we can create. So when we talk about the first type of suffering, which is the suffering of material things, most of our suffering related to material things is all because we have too much attachment to something. So when it breaks or when we lose it, we may feel suffering. Or because we have our wishes that we make out of our wishes, we make needs. And then up to the moment that so we need to put a lot of effort to gain our needs, our actual wishes. Our wants, we make needs to become wants to become needs. And then so we need to put effort to get what we want. And then after we are sad when we separate from what we want. And then a lot of suffering comes out of that. So basically, one of the keys in order to deal with the suffering coming from material things is one thing point, get what you need until what you really need. Eat a good food, take good care of the body, live in a healthy place, harmonious place, have good relation with the people that we are around us, make in a way that life can be in our own hand, which is the most precious thing we have is our time also. So we need to use it in the best way. Not dedicate our whole life just to take care of the things that we possess and in order to have more and more and more. It's quite tiring actually. So in a way, make a distinction between the need and the want. Like, even when I see children nowadays, I was today in the airport looking at a little boy, I get quite shocked when I see that the wants of the children look like the needs. And it looks like the magic words that a child says, I want. And then today I was there in the airport and then there was the mother saying sorry that the boy wanted something and the mother didn't understand that he wanted it. And so she didn't do it and she was like almost kneeling down and saying sorry to the child because he was screaming. One of the things very interesting in the monastery where I grew up from 12 to 24, the word want didn't mean anything. No, I would go to my teacher and say, Gamma, I want. And then he would look to me like saying, so what? If you went and you say, I need, okay, let's do everything necessary if you truly need it. Because the more I want, the more I will want. It never ends. Okay? So first type of suffering, material suffering. We can help others when they have material suffering, especially giving food, sharing the food, sharing the material things we have, helping those that have less than what we have, because if we don't have the minimum, then it's really more difficult. There is a true material suffering that actually does exist. Okay? Because compassion is two types also. There is what we call the compassion of intention and the compassion of action. The compassion of intention is, I really wish you to be free from your own suffering, but I'm sorry, I cannot do anything about it. This doesn't mean I don't wish you to be free from suffering. I open my heart to you, I don't want you to suffer, but I'm not able to deal with my own suffering, forget about helping you. The other type of compassion which is called active compassion. I wish you to be free from suffering, and I will do everything I can to help you get out of your suffering. There is one saying that says, suffering by nature should be eliminated. It doesn't matter whose suffering it is. When we see someone that is suffering, when we see someone that is hungry, when we see someone in cold, in pain, it doesn't matter in what situation, who this person may be. It's our duty to help. Suffering by itself should be eliminated. Which means we share what we have. If there are people that have less and we can help them, we should. And the most easy type of suffering to avoid and to help is the material suffering. It's quite simple. Just share what we have, make a check, give some food, give some clothes, go to a shop, buy. It's quite easy actually. I remember one of the most joyful days I had when I was a small child, I was remembering now. Is one day I was with my mom at home, and then I had many toys. I had a little room under the stairs, and it was full of toys. And I was quite small, I think it was before my sister was born, so I was around almost 4, I think. And then I was talking to my mother, I don't remember how the thing came about, and I said, okay, let's give these toys. Let's say, we said, okay, what toys you don't need, my mom asked, what toys you don't like to play, let's give them away. So we went around and I just said, okay, this one I like, but I don't play so much, so we put aside. And I selected a big plastic bag full of toys. So we went around. At that time in Brazil, still now, but it's now not as before, there were so many children on the street children. So we started going around and giving the toys around to the children on the road. It was so nice. I remember for me it was such a big lesson, the joy of giving. It's much greater than the joy of receiving. And to share what we have. So, the easiest way to help is materially. Okay? So the first type of suffering, physical suffering, we can help in many ways. Sure, we need to respect our own limits. No? I cannot give away everything I have, then tomorrow I am in the line on the other side also asking for help. That's not working also, but if we really make a distinction between our needs and our wants, it makes a big difference. Okay? Also because when I want something so much, why do I want that object? Because I like to. Because the important thing is to possess the object, or I want it because actually I want the sensation of satisfaction that I have when I gain the object. Normally what we truly want is the sensation of satisfaction. And I can tell you, I truly believe we can get much more satisfaction by giving than by receiving. So the only thing we need to be careful is that it becomes a little bit addictive. When we start giving, it's so nice. We start sharing. But it's important. It's one way how we can help. How we can put into practice compassion. Second type of suffering is the physical suffering. Physical suffering is the suffering that comes out of pain, cold, heat, thirst, hunger. Basically, this is most of the physical suffering. Okay? For the physical suffering, where we need to look for solutions? In the body. Which means, for hunger we need to eat, for pain we need to go to the doctor, and so on. And also here we can help people in this level. It is more difficult to help in that sense. It is more difficult, it's more easy just to give something material and to help a person in that way than, for example, to help a person that is sick. To really be of assistance for a sick person. And be there, help the person, listen, help the person to walk or to wash or to eat or whatever. Or sometimes just to be of company for someone that is sick. Or to accompany to the doctor, or to give medicine, or whatever. There are many ways that we can help on that. But it's the other type of suffering that we should help. Okay? And it is more difficult than helping materially, but still it's not so difficult. In the moment that we can help people giving them medicine, we can help people helping them bringing doctors, like if we go to places where these things don't exist, where the people don't have enough, we can help in many ways. I have seen this a lot, I've done it the best I can in this sense, but it's not that difficult. And whenever we have someone around us that has a physical suffering, we can try to help a little bit. Very often the most difficult part is that we feel incapable. What do I do? Not all of us have the knowledge of medicine, and not all of us know really how to do is just to be nearby, to try sometimes to help, to serve, like, okay, a person doesn't feel so well, can I take things for you, can I help you physically, whatever way. Okay? This is the second type of suffering. And related to our own self, we try to eliminate our suffering of body in the best way. Let's say in these modern times in the West, we're quite good at it. Okay? If we feel cold, we have central heating. If we feel hot, we have air conditioning. Whenever we feel hunger, we have something to eat. Whenever we feel thirsty, we have something to drink. Whenever we feel tired, maybe most of the time we can rest. It's like we are always doing something. If we feel pain, we take a painkiller. Like we are always doing something to avoid physical suffering. Okay? Next type of suffering is the social suffering. Social suffering is the suffering that comes by not interacting in a peaceful way. We already start to get to things that we have more. And it's still more difficult to help also. But if we take the three types of suffering, which suffering is more deep? Material, physical, or social? Social suffering is more deep. Okay? Normally social suffering comes from the fact that we are different. We have different ways of seeing things, different ways of relating to reality. Very often we do not accept the difference of others, and we want others just to be as we want them to be. Most of the time we suffer because a person is in a certain way, or because a person is not what we think the person should be. Very often I see people complaining about their father, their mother, their children, their husband, their wife, whoever. But it's never really complaining about what they're actually doing or what they actually are. It's because they are not what they want them to be. Okay? Normally we suffer more because things are not what we want them to be than for actually what they actually are. True or not? Like, not most of the time, when you listen to most of the complaints, okay, our own complaints are quite enough, but if we put together the complaints of our friends and families and so on, very often most of the complaints are not because how things are. It's because things are not the way how I wanted them to be. And this comes very strong when we talk about the relationship with other people. Oh, you are not supposed to be like this. Excuse me, I am what I am. And here comes one point I'd like to explain. Try to make it simple and short. Whenever we relate to a person, or actually to anything, an object, a person, a situation, the mechanism is the same. But we're talking about persons. So whenever we relate to a person, I see you, good. Then we meet again next week. Who do I expect to meet? The same person or someone slightly different? The same person. Okay? And when I see you, truly I relate myself not to yourself, but to the mental image I have of you. I have an idealized idea of what you are. Is this clear? So I have a mental image of my friend. So what happens then? I see you today, I create a mental image of you. We meet today the first time, so I have a mental image of each other. Then we meet again in 6 months. Okay? And you see me full of tattoos and a long hair. Okay? And then you look and say, you have changed. What happened to you? What is that? And maybe you get upset. Oh, you were not like this. How come? But you are upset because of what I have become, or because that I do not fulfill the image you have of me. And normally when the person is not anymore what we think the person should be, who do we blame? The fact that we do not have an updated mental image? Or the fact that a person is wrong? You are not supposed to be this. Why? Because I never imagined you in that way. Okay. But what happens is that, do we human beings change? Do we transform? Constantly. We are constantly in transformation, every moment of our life. When we are always together with someone, we perceive this transformation less because we are always together. So when we don't see someone maybe for 6 months, for 1 year, then we see the person again, you have changed. Sometimes we're happy, sometimes not. But the fact is that we need somehow to update our own mental image. We cannot blame the person for being different. The person is simply changing as everybody changes. Because we interact. Based on the experiences of life that we make, we change. Okay? But what happens? Not because of this mental image thing. Not only we suffer sometimes when people change. And we blame them, why you are like this, you are not supposed to be like this. It's quite funny when someone says you are not supposed to be like this, no? I am what I am, sorry. No? It's even worse when someone comes and says, you cannot be like that. If I am, I can, first of all. Or when someone says, you cannot do this. If I am doing this, means I can do it. If you can say it's better if you don't do it, okay, then we can discuss about that. No? But if I'm doing this, I can do it somehow. No? Anyhow, the main point I wanted to bring is that when we have a mental image, we make our mental image a little bit more complex because we give names. So what happens is like this. We give one name, which is father, mother, friend, daughter, and so on, son. So we have one mental image of what a mother is supposed to be, of what a father is supposed to be. Then what happens? That person doesn't fit on my mental image of what mother or father or son or daughter is. So can I blame my mother because she's not the mother I expect to have? Does that happen sometimes? You are my mother, you are not supposed to be like that. You are my son, you are not supposed to be like that. And like this we go on. So a lot of the social conflict and suffering is coming from our expectation that others should be how we want them to be. Instead of being open to relate ourselves with others. Okay? So we need to update the image. And sometimes trying to look at the other person, taking away all the names we give. Try to look at your son, father, mother, daughter, husband, wife, and so on, taking away the label. Son, father, mother, husband, wife, and so on. And see what happens. It's quite nice, actually. Okay. The fourth point is the suffering, which is the mental suffering. Suffering coming from our emotions. Suffering coming from insatisfaction, from anger, from fear, from jealousy, and so on. Okay, anxiety, expectations. Okay, what suffering do we have more? Physical suffering or mental suffering? Mental suffering, right? This means we are rich materially. One of the teachers of my teacher used to say there are two types of suffering, physical suffering and mental suffering. The poor people suffer mostly from physical suffering. The rich people suffer mostly from mental suffering. By the end of the day, they suffer in the same way. Okay? But just one very simple thing. For physical suffering, where do we need to look for a solution? In the mind or in the body? In the body. I have hunger. What do? I go to meditate? Or to pray? It's nice, but the hunger will continue. I need to get food. Okay? So body, where do we need to look for the solution? In the body. And when we have mental suffering, where do we need to look for the solution? Where do we look normally for a solution for our mental suffering? When we feel anxiety, when we feel sad, when we feel jealous or of insatisfaction or sadness, any sort of mental suffering, emotional mental suffering. Where do we look for a solution normally? We go to buy something. We go to look for pleasures. Normally what most people do is they try to forget about the suffering instead of looking for a solution. Because the solution we can only find in the mind, in the heart, not outside. Okay. So, from the 4 types of suffering, material, physical, social, and mental, the most difficult to help is mental suffering. After that comes social, after that comes physical, and then comes material. But when we put our compassion into action, these are the 4 directions that we should put our energy. With the people that are more near to us, we can try to help them to eliminate their anxiety, their sadness, and so on. It's very difficult. It's the most difficult of all. But we can try. The more we know how to deal with our own suffering, the better we can know how to help others. It's like in Brazil, in the forest, and in I think North America also, the shamans on tribes. The one that is the one supposed to cure other, he must get all the sickness first. So he would go through all the sicknesses, so he knows what the sickness is, so he knows how and he will be through the process of cure also, so when he sees someone with the same sickness, he's more able to cure that person. So once we are able to deal with our suffering, we can deal better with the suffering of others. We can help others better. Okay? One of the most important things is open our heart and cultivate this daily. And whenever we see any suffering around of us, we try in the best way of our abilities to help them. Respecting one thing, just one last thing before we conclude. Compassion without wisdom can be very frustrating. Because I love you, I wish you to be happy, I have a lot of compassion, I don't want you to suffer, but you suffer. Then if I open my heart truly and I start looking at all the suffering that exists around the world, I can get really frustrated. Okay? So sometimes what happens, people open their heart and when they start seeing so much suffering, they close because they don't want to suffer. That's why compassion and love must go together with wisdom. Wisdom is for us to recognize our own limits. What can I truly do? And the only thing that we can do, any one of us, if we say, using a Buddhist term, if even all the Buddhas would come here, all the holy beings would come here, okay? The only thing that anyone can do to help anyone else is to interact with that person in a positive way. I can interact materially, I can interact physically, I can interact verbally, energetically, I can interact in many ways, giving an example. But the only thing I can do to help you to eliminate your own suffering is interact with you in a positive way. That's the only thing we can do. Nothing more. So in the moment I understand that, I see you are suffering because you or whoever is suffering. Why? Because you are on your own process of life. Some things you understood, some things you didn't understand. You have your own defilements, you have your own process. So the only thing I can do is interact. I do my best. And that's enough. This is important. No one of us can solve the whole problems of the world. But we can interact, and we do interact constantly. So we need to interact in the best way as we can. For me, the important thing is to be sure that everyone that I meet, everyone that I interact in my life, I try to have a positive interaction. I try to give something good. I try to help in a way. It happens so many times that I have people that I love so much that I see them suffering and I'm not able to eliminate their suffering. Francis dedicated for compassion. It's something very special. I have a lot of respect for him. And I think it's really like very beautiful, because nowadays we don't talk much about compassion. And I believe it's one of the greatest qualities that we need in order to have a society that is peaceful and happy for everyone. So from our side, the more we give, the more we receive. Like there is this prayer from Saint Francis called Preghiera Semplice in Italian. I know it in Italian. A simple prayer. In Italian it says, "È dando che si riceve," is giving that you receive. And one of the ways of giving is giving love. Is caring for others, opening our heart. Okay? So I would like to conclude with one phrase, two phrases. One phrase is to just say the attitude that I come today here, which is a phrase that was said to me by a rabbi in Brazil. When I went back to Brazil after going to the monastery, I was 13. And my grandmother, my Jewish grandmother, took me to talk to the rabbi. Maybe what happened to my grandson, went to the monastery so young, let's see what happened. So, a wonderful rabbi called Newton Bonder. And when we sat down, the first thing that he told me was, if I am I, because you are you. And if you are you, because I am not I, and you are not you. But if I am I, because I am I, and if you are you, because you are you, then we can talk. And we'll repeat once again. If I am I, because you are you, if I act in a way because you are you, I am not I. And if you are you because I am I, if you change your behavior and your way of being because you are with me, then you are not truly being yourself. So if I am I because you are you, and if you are you because I am not I, and you are not you. But if I am I because I am I, and you are you because you are you, then we can talk. I try to apply this in every situation I am. Okay. And the last is a Buddhist phrase that always accompanied me from around 4 centuries ago. In Tibetan it says, Chego, Chego samne nishu sum, manchu, manchu samne nishu sum, aka, samne nishu sum, tetarnane, lomoro, chukshu no, mise, tongpa sebe namdani. In English, it would be something like that. Thinking of doing it, thinking of doing it, thinking of doing it, 20 years passed by. I couldn't do it, 20 years passed by. Oh, why I didn't do it, oh, why I didn't do it, 20 years passed by. In such way, 60 years passed by. That's the biography of an empty life. If we remember that at that time in Tibet, the life was more or less 60 years long. If we add to it, not thinking of doing, 20 years passed by, we make 80. The fact is, it's never too late to start and never too early to start. If there is something that we believe that is important in our life, such as opening our heart, dedicating our energy daily for love and compassion from our side, if we really believe something is important, we need to start today, not tomorrow. Then it really happens. Otherwise, it will never come. I have just one request to do for all of you, which is, if there is anything I said that any one of you may think that it may be of benefit, something that you like, say, okay, this is nice. If anything you think that may be of benefit, please put it into practice. It's the only request I do. Okay? Thank you very much. Yes, also. If there is any questions, very welcome.
It's heel duidelijk.
It was very clear.
So I think once again, please remember to put into practice. Because to understand is one thing, to realize is another. Understanding is just the first step. It's like a musical instrument. It's not enough to know the theory. We need to play it again and again and again and again in order to know how to play it well. I can memorize the whole manual of this beautiful organ. And I can know all the technique by heart. But if I never sit down and start playing, I will never truly We can know the whole theory of love and compassion and everything else. If we don't go to people that are suffering and help them, if we don't open our heart to everyone around us, don't need to go far away. Everyone around us, we can find suffering people everywhere, we can help people everywhere. If we don't start opening our heart, it will never happen. It just remain an idealized